What are some of the big gaps or unknowns in the work that you do in terms of data and information? And what kind of research or data or information would make your job easier? And how can civil society contribute to getting that?
I just want to go to that. I think for us, from Marwa, human rights, the right to information is a big issue for us as an issue that you put out there. And I think for all of us who have done work in journalism, who have done work in NGO, who have done work, we know that it is very difficult to get accurate data. And then we have also data that comes in a bigger group these days, you know, Singapore residents. The residents will be citizens and PRs. So how do we see patterns? That kind of pattern is becoming a privilege, and who really sees that is going to become a tough question. So when James asks us the question, who are the employers, etc., we are always struggling with data. And I think if you look at the back of any annual report, I studied the HDB for some time now, I haven't gone back. You will see more and more information being summarized. So when the group gets bigger, a whole thing can fall in, and hopefully it's not as big as an elephant. You know? Yeah.
The MOM webpage is chock-a-block with statistics, and sometimes it's useful, you can find a figure there, and sometimes it's not, depending on what you want. For instance, let's say a pertinent question I would ask would be, for instance, foreign domestic workers, how many of them renew their contract after one term? Very good indication of whether how happy they are or how good the employers are to let them stay on. I remember 2-3 years ago, there was a figure that was thrown out by the MOM in a much longer press statement that they had, and that figure was actually quite low. I can't remember. But you see, these figures are not regularly updated, where every year you have that stats available and you can chart a kind of trend. It really emerges only when someone asks a question, maybe it's in Parliament, and then it comes out as a part of a statement that addresses so many issues. So for those of us in civil society, we try to track it, but there are so many issues to track that we definitely have gaps. So it's an ongoing thing to build up a profile of all the so many issues affecting foreign workers.
Information is certainly very difficult to come by, and I mean, we don't even have basic stats like how many Chinese workers are in Singapore, how many Bangladeshi workers are in Singapore. And I find myself having to comb through a lot of reports, newspaper articles, just to put figures together to make sense of something. And this is important because the government likes to say that our measures are effective, we have prosecuted people and all that, but the question is, how many have you prosecuted out of how many complaints, for example? And oftentimes the data is not disaggregated. Yeah, so it's very difficult to determine. For example, just recently in relation to the riot, Tan Chuan Jin said that we only received 3,000 complaints, yeah, out of like the 1 billion migrant workers here. Yeah, but he was probably only referring to salary-related complaints. Yeah, what about complaints relating to other types of legislation like work injuries, employment agencies, Employment of Foreign Manpower Act? So it's a very selective use of statistics also. Yeah, so it's very difficult to get a good sense of what's happening because these data just comes out in drips and drabs, and it's not contextualized, not disaggregated.
I want to share some of my experience on getting data when I was in Parliament. I was in Parliament from 2007 to 2009 as a nominated member of Parliament. And during that time, I kind of felt that, you know, you get, as an MP, you kind of get a quota for parliamentary questions every time Parliament sits. And so I just went out of my way to find out more. Right? I also did reach out to some academics and think tanks and just ask, hey, you know, if there's anything you guys want to know, tell me. I'll try and file questions and just find out for you. This is what I learned. I learned that information asymmetry is very real and alive in Singapore and is very deliberately kept alive. I can only speculate as to why, but I'll tell you that the outcome is that the government has a very strong strategic advantage in any policy debate because they know all the statistics. You never know what you don't know. You never know what you don't know. And so, in a policy debate, You will never know what the government will come up next in terms of statistics. And I actually don't I take it as an article of faith that when the government says X% or Y%, that percent is real. They did not make that up. But you have to question the assumptions, how they got there, what are the things they're not telling you, right? And in my experience, when I filed questions in Parliament, this was in Parliament, mind you. You can file a question, you never know what you're going to get. Right? There is no obligation for a minister to, there's no convention even for a minister to fully answer your question. They will always answer the question that they want to answer. Right? So I can ask for X, Y, Z in excruciating detail, I get aggregated summary. And that goes to that answers data. That until and unless we have a Freedom of Information Act in Singapore, our ability to access data and the amount of data that we have will always be held hostage to the government's interest and what they want to disclose. Alex has asked to make a comment.
Regarding the question about data, what are the gaps? I think they've given you quite a lot of answers. I particularly second Jollivan's point and Kampong's. But I would say that with respect to migrant workers, while we may look to the government for the statistical data, for example, like how many of each nationality are here, basic information you might think, but not available. In many ways, it is possible for civil society to go out and get their own data. But because of the nature of the migrant community as one that is not particularly plugged in to the digital space, and one that is relatively invisible, it will take an incredible amount of footwork. For example, just to give you an idea, just to find out what percentage of foreign domestic workers still do not get a weekly day off despite what the law says, you can find out. You can get, a good statistician would say, let's do a random sample of so many HDB blocks, let's knock on every door within that block, and then if you have a large enough sample, you can come up with a pretty good estimate for the nation, right? But it needs footwork, all right? Unfortunately, we're gradually becoming a generation that is only comfortable sitting in front of a computer. We hope that data spews out from the screen, and I think very few of us want to sweat it out, climbing the stairs and walking, pounding the streets and speaking to strangers, getting data. So in many ways, we at TWC2 have plenty of ideas to do research. We just don't have the manpower.